There is a kind of discipline that makes people uncomfortable. Not the discipline that is announced. Not the discipline that is displayed. Not the discipline that requires an audience. The most disturbing form of discipline is quiet. It appears every morning, at the same time, in the same place, performing the same necessary action. No matter how the person feels. No matter how much motivation is present. No matter how many distractions are available. This kind of person becomes difficult to understand because most people are controlled by their emotional weather. They work when they feel inspired. They stop when they feel tired. They begin when conditions are perfect. They disappear when resistance arrives. But the disciplined person has crossed a line. They no longer negotiate with every emotion. They no longer ask themselves the same question every morning. Do I feel like doing this today? They have already decided. And once a decision is made deeply enough, the mind eventually stops asking permission. That is the transformation we are going to examine. Not how to become more motivated. Not how to become more excited. Not how to force yourself through endless suffering. Something more dangerous. How to remove the need to negotiate with yourself. Because the person who no longer needs to negotiate with himself becomes extremely difficult to stop. For the next 30 minutes, we will dismantle the illusions that have kept you inconsistent. The illusion of motivation. The illusion of choice. The illusion of variety. The illusion of perfection. The illusion of willpower. And then we will replace them with a system inspired by ancient Japanese discipline. A system built not on emotional intensity, but on continuity. Not on heroic effort, but on identity. Not on trying harder, but on removing the opportunities to escape. Because the strongest machine is not the one that constantly accelerates. It is the one that does not stop. Imagine a man named Ren. Ren is intelligent. He understands what he needs to do. He has watched the lectures. He has saved the books. He has created the plans. He has written the schedules. He has promised himself countless times that this time will be different. And for a few days, it is different. He wakes early. He exercises. He studies. He works. He refuses distractions. He feels powerful. Then one morning, the energy disappears. The alarm rings. His body feels heavy. The room is cold. The mind begins its negotiations. Just today. Start again tomorrow. You need rest. You have already been disciplined. And Ren listens. The next day becomes the next week. The next week becomes another failure. And then something happens. He begins again. A new plan. A new notebook. A new schedule. A new promise. But the same identity remains. The identity of the person who begins. Not the identity of the person who continues. This distinction is rarely understood. Most people believe their problem is a lack of knowledge. They think they need a better strategy, a better app, a better routine, a better motivational speech. But Ren does not need another beginning. He needs to stop being the person who constantly returns to the beginning. This is the first truth. You do not become disciplined by repeatedly starting. You become disciplined by becoming someone who does not stop. A river does not become powerful because it moves with violence. A river becomes powerful because it continues. Day after day. Year after year. Through stone. Through darkness. Through seasons. The river does not ask whether it feels motivated to flow. It flows. And eventually, the mountain changes. Motivation is one of the most dangerous substances in modern life. Because it feels like progress. You watch something inspiring. You feel different. You imagine a stronger version of yourself. For a brief moment, your future becomes emotionally real. And then, you mistake the feeling of transformation for transformation itself. But emotion is weather. It arrives. It disappears. If your discipline depends on emotional weather, then your life will be controlled by the climate of your mind. The ancient warrior understood this. A samurai could not enter battle only on the days he felt courageous. A Zen practitioner could not meditate only when the mind was peaceful. The practice existed precisely because the mind was not always peaceful. This is the first principle. The practice must survive the disappearance of motivation. Otherwise, it is not discipline. It is enthusiasm. And enthusiasm is unreliable. The modern mind wants to feel ready before beginning. The disciplined mind begins, and readiness follows. This is where neuroscience becomes relevant. The brain adapts through repetition. Repeated actions strengthen pathways associated with those actions. The behavior becomes increasingly familiar. The friction decreases. The action becomes less dependent on conscious debate. This is why repetition matters. Not because repetition is glamorous, but because the brain learns what you repeatedly prove. Every time you say, "I will do this," and then do not do it, you teach your mind something. You teach it that your promises are negotiable. Every time you continue despite resistance, you teach it something else. You teach it that your commands have weight. This is the beginning of identity transformation. You are not merely completing a task. You are creating evidence. Evidence that changes the answer to a deeper question. What kind of person am I? Ren believes his problem is that he makes the wrong choice. But the deeper problem is that he is forced to make the choice too many times. Every morning he asks, should I exercise? Should I study? Should I work? Should I rest? Should I begin now? Should I begin later? This seems like freedom, but unlimited choice creates friction. Every decision consumes attention, and the mind is extremely skilled at producing reasons to delay difficult action. The ancient system we are building begins with a brutal idea. Remove the decision. The practice must be decided before the moment of resistance. You do not decide at 6:00 a.m. whether you will train. You decide the night before. You do not decide when the emotion arrives. You decide before the emotion arrives. This is the principle of predecision. A warrior does not invent a strategy in the middle of panic. The strategy is prepared beforehand. A choreographer does not improvise every movement during the performance. The movements have already been arranged. The body simply follows the sequence. Your discipline must become choreography. The time is fixed. The place is fixed. The action is fixed. The response to resistance is fixed. There is no courtroom. There is no debate. There is only execution. This is why a simple system often defeats a complicated one. The more decisions required, the more opportunities exist for escape. You do not need to become stronger than every temptation. You need to stop meeting temptation in the courtroom of your mind. The decision has already been made. Ren changes his routine constantly. 1 week he runs. The next week he lifts weights. Then he practices meditation. Then he studies a new language. Then he changes his schedule. Then he discovers a new method. He believes variety will keep him interested. But the result is fragmentation. He becomes a beginner in everything. Mastery requires a period of repetition so long that the ego becomes bored. This is where most people leave. They want novelty. They want stimulation. They want constant evidence that something exciting is happening. But real transformation is often visually unimpressive. The same book, the same exercise, the same hour, the same quiet room. Again, and again, and again. This is not weakness. This is construction. A machine is not built by constantly changing its design. A blade is not sharpened by touching the stone once. A river does not carve through rock by appearing once. Continuity creates force. There is a reason ancient traditions emphasized repetition. The repeated action, eventually, moves beneath the surface of conscious effort. It becomes embodied. The mind no longer needs to be convinced. The body recognizes the sequence. This is where discipline begins to resemble automation. Not because you become a machine in the literal sense, but because you stop requiring emotional permission. The action becomes part of the architecture of your day. You do not wake up and ask whether you should brush your teeth. You do not hold a philosophical debate about whether you should open the door. The action is already integrated. The goal is not to make every disciplined behavior effortless. The goal is to make it inevitable. Now, we reach one of the most destructive illusions. Perfection. Ren believes that if he cannot complete the full workout, the full study session, the full routine, there is no point beginning. This is how the mind turns one imperfect day into a broken identity. You miss one day. Then you miss another. Then the gap becomes evidence. You see, you were never disciplined. But this is a lie. The ancient principle is simple. Continuity is more important than perfection. A practice does not need to be impressive to remain alive. On a powerful day, you may train for an hour. On a difficult day, you may train for 10 minutes. The important question is not, did I perform perfectly? The question is, did I preserve the chain? This is the difference between a broken practice and a living practice. A living practice can become smaller. It can become slower. It can become quieter. But it does not disappear. Think of a fire. It does not need to remain a massive flame every moment. Sometimes it becomes embers. But if the embers remain alive, the fire can return. The danger is not weakness. The danger is disappearance. This is why the system requires a minimum action. A minimum that is so small, you cannot honestly claim that the day was impossible. 10 minutes. 1 page. 1 set. 1 paragraph. 1 meditation session. The amount is not the point. The continuity is the point. Because every time you preserve the practice, you cast a vote for the identity you are building.